The security camera footage would haunt Detective Sarah Mitchell for years to come. Frame by frame, it captured the final moments of 23-year-old Rebecca Thompson as she walked through the parking garage of her apartment complex on that rainy October evening in 2019. Her blonde hair bounced with each step, her nursing scrubs still crisp from her shift at Children's Hospital. She clutched her phone to her ear, laughing at something her sister Emma had said during their nightly call. In less than 30 seconds, Rebecca would vanish from that grainy black and white footage, leaving behind only her scattered belongings and a community that would never be the same. The call came in at 11:47 p.m. Rebecca's roommate, Jessica Martinez, had returned from her evening shift at the local restaurant to find their apartment door ajar, Rebecca's purse on the kitchen counter, but no sign of her friend. What made Jessica's blood run cold wasn't just the absence of Rebecca, but the presence of something else entirely. A single white rose laid carefully on Rebecca's pillow, its petals still fresh, its stem cut with surgical precision. Detective Mitchell arrived at the scene within 20 minutes, her experienced eyes immediately cataloging the details that would prove crucial in the days ahead. The apartment showed no signs of struggle. Rebecca's keys hung on their usual hook by the door. Her work badge lay on the counter next to her purse, along with a half-eaten sandwich and a cup of coffee that was still warm. Everything suggested Rebecca had made it home safely, had begun her evening routine, and then nothing. The first 48 hours of any missing person case are critical, and Mitchell knew it. She assembled a team that included Detective James Rodriguez, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving cold cases, and Officer Michael Chun, whose expertise in digital forensics would prove invaluable. Together, they began the painstaking process of reconstructing Rebecca's final day. Rebecca Thompson had been the kind of person who left an impression on everyone she met. Born and raised in the small town of Millbrook, she had been the valedictorian of her high school class, the president of the student council, and the girl who organized charity drives for the local animal shelter. Her parents, Robert and Linda Thompson, had watched with pride as their daughter pursued her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse, graduating from the State University with honors before landing her dream job at Children's Hospital. "Rebecca was the light of our lives," Linda would later tell Detective Mitchell, her voice breaking as she clutched a framed photo of her daughter. "She called us every Sunday without fail. She never missed a birthday, never forgot an anniversary. She was responsible, careful, cautious. This isn't like her." The investigation began with Rebecca's co-workers at the hospital. Her supervisor, Nancy Williams, painted a picture of a dedicated nurse who had arrived early and stayed late, who had remembered the names of every child she treated and their parents' faces. But it was Rebecca's friend and fellow nurse, Amanda Clark, who provided the first real clue. Rebecca had been getting weird messages, Amanda confided to Detective Mitchell during their interview. She didn't want to make a big deal about it, but someone had been sending her flowers at work. Anonymous deliveries, always white roses. She thought it was sweet at first, maybe a secret admirer, but then they started coming with notes. The notes, Amanda revealed, had begun innocuously enough. Simple messages like, "You're beautiful," and "I'm thinking of you." But as weeks passed, they had grown more intimate, more possessive. "I know you better than you know yourself," one had read. "We're meant to be together forever," said another. The final note, delivered just 3 days before Rebecca's disappearance, had been the most chilling. "Soon, my love. Very soon." Detective Rodriguez took the lead on tracking down the flower deliveries. The florist, Margaret Stevens, remembered the orders well. They had come from the same customer every week for 2 months, always paid for in cash, always with specific instructions to include a handwritten note. The customer had given his name as David Miller, but when Rodriguez attempted to trace the address provided, it led to a vacant lot on the outskirts of town. Meanwhile, Officer Chin was diving deep into Rebecca's digital footprint. Her phone records showed regular communication with family and friends, but nothing suspicious. Her social media accounts were private and showed no signs of harassment or unusual activity. It was her work computer that provided the breakthrough they needed. Hidden in Rebecca's email deleted folder was a series of messages from an account with the address foreverandways@gmail.com. The emails painted a disturbing picture of escalating obsession. The sender claimed to have been watching Rebecca for months, learning her routines, her favorite coffee shop, her route to work. He described in unsettling detail what she had worn on specific days, what she had eaten for lunch, even conversations she had had with coworkers. "I know you don't know me yet," one email read, "but I know you, I know that you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I know that you always order vanilla lattes with extra foam. I know that you're kind to everyone, even when they don't deserve it. That's why I love you, Rebecca. That's why we're perfect for each other." The emails had been sent from various IP addresses, suggesting the sender was using public computers or VPNs to hide his identity. But Chen's expertise in digital forensics revealed a pattern. Many of the messages had been sent during the evening hours from IP addresses associated with the public library's computer lab. Detective Mitchell immediately contacted the library's head librarian, Dorothy Johnson, who proved to be an invaluable ally. Dorothy had an excellent memory for faces and a detailed log of computer usage. She remembered a regular patron who had been using the computers almost nightly for the past several months. A man in his 30s with dark hair and glasses, always polite, always quiet, always using the same computer terminal in the back corner. "He signed in as Tom Wilson," Dorothy explained, "but I always thought there was something off about him. He never checked out books, never seemed interested in anything except the computer. And he always paid such close attention to anyone who walked by, especially young women." The library's security footage confirmed Dorothy's description. The man calling himself Tom Wilson was clearly the same person who had been sending Rebecca the threatening emails. But Tom Wilson proved to be as much of a dead end as David Miller. Another false identity leading nowhere. The investigation had reached a crucial point. They had evidence of stalking, clear proof of obsession, but no real identity for their suspect. It was Rebecca's sister Emma who provided the connection they desperately needed. Emma Thompson Harris had been Rebecca's closest confidant, the person she called every night, the one she shared her deepest thoughts with. When Detective Mitchell interviewed Emma for the second time, asking her to think of anyone who might have had unusual interest in Rebecca, Emma's face went pale. "There was someone," Emma said slowly. "About 6 months ago, Rebecca told me about a patient's father at the hospital. She said he made her uncomfortable, that he always found excuses to talk to her, asked personal questions. She said he somehow knew details about her life that she had never shared. The patient was 7-year-old Tyler Bennett, who had been treated for leukemia at Children's Hospital. His father, Marcus Bennett, had been a constant presence during Tyler's treatment, which had lasted several months. Hospital records showed that Marcus had specifically requested that Rebecca be Tyler's primary nurse, claiming that Tyler had formed a special attachment to her. Detective Rodriguez pulled Marcus Bennett's background information and immediately knew they had found their suspect. Marcus Bennett, age 34, had a history of restraining orders filed against him by 2 ex-girlfriends. He had been arrested twice for stalking, but had never been convicted. He worked as a computer technician, which explained his ability to hide his digital tracks, and he lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. When the police arrived at Marcus Bennett's house with a search warrant, they found a shrine to Rebecca Thompson that was both heartbreaking and terrifying. The spare bedroom had been converted into what could only be described as a Rebecca museum. The walls were covered with photographs, some clearly taken from a distance without Rebecca's knowledge, others printed from her social media accounts. There were work schedules, maps of her daily routes, and detailed notes about her habits and preferences. But most chilling of all was a wedding dress hanging in the closet, still in its protective bag, with a receipt dated just 1 week before Rebecca's disappearance. The receipt was made out to Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Bennett, and attached to it was a handwritten note. "For our special day, my darling Rebecca." Marcus Bennett was not at home when police arrived, but his neighbors reported seeing him leave the previous evening with what appeared to be heavy luggage loaded into his van. An APB was issued immediately, and every law enforcement agency in the tri-state area was put on alert. The search for Rebecca Thompson had become a race against time. Detective Mitchell knew that every hour that passed decreased the likelihood of finding Rebecca alive. The FBI was called in to assist, and Agent Catherine Price brought resources and expertise that proved crucial to the investigation. Agent Price's behavioral analysis suggested that Marcus Bennett's obsession with Rebecca had reached a crisis point. The purchase of the wedding dress, combined with the escalating tone of his messages, indicated that he was likely planning to act on his delusions. The fact that he had taken Rebecca from her apartment rather than attempting to approach her publicly suggested that he was aware his feelings were not reciprocated and that he was prepared to use force. "He's created an elaborate fantasy where Rebecca is going to be his willing bride," Agent Price explained to the task force. In his mind, he just needs to get her away from the influences that are preventing her from recognizing their destined love. He likely believes that given enough time alone together, she'll come to understand that they're meant to be together. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tyler Bennett, Marcus's 7-year-old son, had been staying with his mother Sarah Bennett since his father's disappearance. When a family services worker visited to check on Tyler's well-being, the boy mentioned that his daddy had a secret place, where he went when he was sad about not seeing Tyler's mother anymore. Sarah Bennett, Marcus's ex-wife, had been cooperative with police from the beginning. She revealed that Marcus had inherited a cabin from his grandfather deep in the Appalachian Mountains, a remote location that he had used as a retreat during their marriage. The cabin was off-grid, accessible only by a rough dirt road, and so isolated that Sarah had always felt uncomfortable there. Marcus always said it was his perfect place, Sarah told Detective Mitchell. He said it was where he could think clearly, where he could be his true self. I always thought it was creepy and lonely, but he loved it there. If he's taken Rebecca anywhere, it would be to that cabin. The cabin was located in a heavily forested area nearly 200 miles from Rebecca's apartment. The task force assembled a tactical team, including hostage negotiators and medical personnel, and made the treacherous journey through winding mountain roads as darkness fell. Detective Mitchell would later describe the scene at the cabin as something out of a nightmare. The small structure had been decorated with white roses and candles, as if for a wedding ceremony. Rebecca's nursing scrubs had been replaced with a white dress, and she was restrained but conscious, though clearly traumatized and weak from her ordeal. Marcus Bennett surrendered without resistance when confronted by the tactical team. He seemed genuinely confused by the presence of law enforcement, repeatedly asking why they were interrupting his wedding day. His complete disconnect from reality was both disturbing and, in a way, fortunate. It had prevented him from harming Rebecca when he realized his fantasy was crumbling. Rebecca was rushed to the nearest hospital, where she was treated for dehydration and shock, but was otherwise physically unharmed. The psychological trauma would take much longer to heal, but she was alive, and that was what mattered most to her family and friends. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. Marcus Bennett was charged with kidnapping, stalking, and multiple counts of harassment. His defense attorney attempted to argue that his client's mental state should be considered, but the evidence of premeditation was overwhelming. The detailed planning, the false identities, the purchase of the wedding dress, all of it pointed to a man who knew exactly what he was doing. During the trial, Rebecca bravely testified about her ordeal. She described the terror of waking up in an unfamiliar place, the confusion of seeing Marcus Bennett, a man she barely remembered from the hospital, talking to her as if they were intimate partners. She spoke about the 3 days she spent in the cabin, with Marcus alternating between treating her like a cherished bride and becoming angry when she didn't respond to his advances. "He kept telling me that I would understand once I got to know him," Rebecca testified, her voice strong despite the tears in her eyes. "He said that people had been filling my head with lies about him, but that he would help me remember how much I loved him. He truly believed that we were meant to be together, that I was just confused." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges. Marcus Bennett was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, the Honorable Patricia Hayes, made it clear that Bennett's actions represented a particularly heinous violation of Rebecca's autonomy and safety. "Mr. Bennett," Judge Hayes said as she delivered the sentence, "you have shown a complete disregard for Ms. Thompson's humanity and agency. You created an elaborate fantasy in which she was an object to be possessed rather than a human being with her own thoughts, feelings, and choices. Your actions have caused immeasurable trauma not only to Ms. Thompson, but to her family and friends. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes and the need to protect society from similar predatory behavior." The impact of Rebecca's case extended far beyond the courtroom. Her experience highlighted the dangers of stalking and the importance of taking threats seriously, even when they initially seem harmless. The children's hospital where Rebecca worked implemented new security protocols, including panic buttons for all staff and enhanced screening procedures for visitors. Rebecca herself became an advocate for stalking victims, working with lawmakers to strengthen legal protections and with law enforcement to improve response procedures. She established the Rebecca Thompson Foundation, which provides support services for stalking victims and funds research into the psychology and prevention of stalking behavior. "I don't want to be defined by what happened to me," Rebecca said during a speech at the foundation's first annual fundraiser. "But I also don't want other women to go through what I went through. If sharing my story can help prevent even one person from experiencing this kind of terror, then something positive will have come from my ordeal." Detective Mitchell, who had worked tirelessly to find Rebecca, remained in touch with her long after the case was closed. She often spoke about the Rebecca Thompson case in training seminars for other law enforcement officers, emphasizing the importance of taking stalking reports seriously and the need for quick, coordinated response when someone goes missing. "Rebecca's case taught me that predators often hide in plain sight," Detective Mitchell would tell her audiences. Marcus Bennett wasn't some stranger lurking in the shadows. He was a father, a computer technician, someone who could blend into normal society. But his fixation on Rebecca was dangerous from the very beginning, and it escalated to the point where he was willing to destroy her life to fulfill his own fantasy. The case also highlighted the crucial role that ordinary citizens can play in solving crimes. From Dorothy Johnson at the library to Tyler Bennett, whose innocent comment about his father's secret place led to Rebecca's rescue. The investigation succeeded because people paid attention and shared what they knew. Agent Price, who had provided the behavioral analysis that proved crucial to understanding Marcus Bennett's motivations, continued to study the case as an example of how online stalking can escalate to physical violence. Her research contributed to new FBI protocols for investigating cyberstalking cases and helped develop better resources for local law enforcement dealing with similar crimes. The Rebecca Thompson case demonstrates the evolution of stalking in the digital age, Agent Price wrote in her report. Traditional stalking behaviors have been amplified and facilitated by technology, allowing predators to gather information about their victims and communicate with them in ways that were impossible just a generation ago. Law enforcement must adapt its methods to address these new realities. For Rebecca's family, the resolution of the case brought both relief and a renewed appreciation for their daughter's strength and resilience. Robert and Linda Thompson became active supporters of the Rebecca Thompson Foundation, sharing their story with other families who had experienced similar traumas. "We almost lost our daughter," Linda Thompson said during a television interview on the second anniversary of Rebecca's rescue. "But we didn't lose her, and that's what matters. She's not the same person she was before this happened. None of us are, but she's alive, and she's fighting to make sure other people don't have to go through what she went through." Emma Thompson Harris, Rebecca's sister, spoke about the importance of the relationship between siblings in recognizing when something is wrong. "I talk to Rebecca every night," Emma explained. "I knew her routine, her voice, her moods. When she didn't answer her phone that night, I knew immediately that something was wrong. I think that's part of what helped the police respond so quickly." The case had a lasting impact on the community where Rebecca lived and worked. The apartment complex where she had been abducted installed additional security measures, including better lighting and more comprehensive camera coverage. The hospital where she worked became a model for other medical facilities dealing with similar security challenges. Jessica Martinez, Rebecca's roommate, struggled with guilt over not being home the night Rebecca was taken. Therapy helped her understand that there was nothing she could have done differently, but she remained deeply affected by the experience. "I keep thinking about how different things might have been if I had been there," Jessica said. "But I also know that Rebecca is strong, and she survived because of her own strength, not because of anything I did or didn't do." The white roses that had been Marcus Bennett's signature became a symbol of the case, representing both the terror of being stalked and the hope of survival. The Rebecca Thompson Foundation chose a white rose as its logo, but surrounded it with thorns to represent the danger that can hide behind seemingly innocent gestures. Marcus Bennett himself showed little remorse during his trial or in the years that followed. His letters from prison, which were monitored by authorities, continued to express his belief that he and Rebecca were meant to be together. His complete inability to understand the wrongness of his actions served as a chilling reminder of the mindset that drives stalking behavior. Bennett never understood that Rebecca was a real person with her own thoughts and feelings, explained Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a forensic psychologist who evaluated Bennett before his trial. In his mind, she was a character in a story that he was writing, and he couldn't comprehend why she wouldn't play the role he had assigned to her. This kind of objectification is at the heart of stalking behavior. The investigation itself became a case study in law enforcement academies, demonstrating the importance of coordinated response, digital forensics, and community cooperation in solving complex crimes. Detective Mitchell was promoted to lieutenant and took charge of a new unit specializing in stalking and domestic violence cases. Officer Chun, whose digital forensics work had been crucial to identifying Marcus Bennett, became a sought-after expert in cyberstalking cases. His techniques for tracing online communications and identifying digital patterns were adopted by law enforcement agencies across the country. Detective Rodriguez, who had painstakingly tracked down the flower deliveries and false identities, continued to work missing persons cases, but always carried with him the lesson that Rebecca's case had taught him about the importance of following every lead, no matter how small. The rescue of Rebecca Thompson after 3 days in captivity represented not just a successful law enforcement operation, but a victory for everyone who refuses to accept that women should live in fear. The coordinated response of multiple agencies, the courage of witnesses who came forward with information, and Rebecca's own incredible strength all contributed to an outcome that could have been tragically different. As the years passed, Rebecca continued her work as a nurse while also dedicating herself to advocacy and education. She spoke at conferences, worked with legislators, and provided support to other stalking victims. Her foundation grew into a national organization that had helped thousands of people navigate the complex legal and emotional challenges of being stalked. "I survived because I had people who cared about me and who took action when I couldn't," Rebecca said during a speech on the 5th anniversary of her rescue. "I survived because law enforcement took my case seriously and worked around the clock to find me. I survived because strangers like the librarian and the florist remembered details that seemed insignificant at the time but proved crucial to the investigation. Most importantly, I survived because I refused to give up hope, even in my darkest moments." The legacy of Rebecca Thompson's case extends far beyond the conviction of Marcus Bennett. It serves as a reminder that stalking is a serious crime that can escalate to violence, that technology has created new tools for predators, but also new resources for law enforcement, and that ordinary citizens have the power to make a difference in the fight against crime. The white roses that once symbolized terror became symbols of hope, resilience, and the power of community to protect its most vulnerable members. Rebecca Thompson's story is not just about surviving a horrific ordeal, but about transforming that experience into a force for positive change in the world. Justice was served not only in the courtroom where Marcus Bennett received his sentence, but in the lives that were saved by the increased awareness and improved procedures that resulted from Rebecca's case. Her courage in sharing her story, her dedication to helping others, and her refusal to be defined by her victimization represent the truest form of justice, the kind that prevents future crimes and empowers survivors to reclaim their lives. In the end, Rebecca Thompson's story is one of triumph over terror, of community over isolation, and of hope over despair. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there are people working to bring us back to the light, and that justice, when it comes, can heal not just individuals but entire communities. The case files of the Rebecca Thompson investigation remain active resources for law enforcement training, and her foundation continues to grow and evolve to meet the changing needs of stalking victims. Her story serves as both a warning about the dangers that can lurk in our everyday lives and an inspiration about the strength of the human spirit when faced with unimaginable challenges. If Rebecca's story has moved you, if it has opened your eyes to the reality of stalking and the importance of taking threats seriously, then her mission has been accomplished. Share this story with others, support organizations that help stalking victims, and remember that your awareness and action can make the difference between tragedy and triumph in someone else's life. Like this story if it has impacted you. And let's work together to ensure that no one else has to endure what Rebecca Thompson survived. Your voice, your vigilance, and your compassion can help create a world where everyone can feel safe in their own lives.